When we receive word back from the federal government in relation to returning a choice between a fixed allocation and user pays options. We can then move forward on working out the best methodology for our community. All councillors will be welcome to have input into that review. I know that this subject has caused an amazing level of conversation in the community, and we will be inviting the community to have their say and help us find a way forward that doesn't send this council back to the bad old days of spiralling deficits and debt to fund everyday living. The review will do what this council does well. It will listen to all sides, not just the view of one party, and we will find a way to move forward. I note today from media comments that Councillor Hill has made the suggestion of a rebate for all water connections. The Townsville Bulletin has run this idea this morning with no comment in relation to how it will be funded by ratepayers. And certainly I expect Councillor Hill will make some comments when she moves a motion. And I would suggest to you, Councillor Hill, that in readiness for the review that we are doing, you also detail where it is proposed to cut the council's work schedule next year to fund the rebate proposal. Perhaps we could stop our record roadworks program and pull the pothole crews off the ground next season. Perhaps we could go back to the bad old days of not doing curb and channel in our own suburbs. We could certainly save millions by not mowing the Strand for 3 years. You could name the sporting and community clubs who we give rebates on our water that we could send to the wall. Or better yet, let's add it back to our deficit and put this council back to the previous years prior to amalgamation. This council was a financial basket case on day one of the amalgamation, as witnessed by a $56 million annual deficit. Queensland Treasury made it clear that we were a heartbeat away from an administrator being appointed. Your suggestion today is the kind of philosophy that sent the local council into a decade of running at a loss. When council suggested we encourage the state government to give $100 for pensioners as they do in the South East, you voted against that, and yet you proposed to blow a $7 million hole in our budget for your political gain. So I'd like to thank Councillor Hill for the opportunity to once again reinforce to the public where the returns from the water business go. It goes back to our community, not to lining anybody's pockets. It goes back to our general pool to pay for water subsidies to community groups and a whole range of other community projects. It is the same formula that every council in the state has used for the past 2 decades. The only difference this year under the new charges is due to the new calculations we have to undertake and the removal of the 40% state subsidy. This return will fall by at least $2 million. This is money that ratepayers will fund to fund important services in the community. I think for Councillor Hill to suggest that we take another $7 million out of our budget would blow a hole through this community in service and financial security. Councillors, I reinforce once again that we will listen and continue to review our water pricing practices to find a way forward. I will not condone moving this community back to the financial train wreck we were in. And I finally comment that this council is in fact the 4th cheapest of the urban councils in Queensland in water charges, and we have just recently seen increases in other councils from 57% in Brisbane to 66% in Redland, in Moreton, and 69% in Gold Coast. So we are not alone in our water issues around the state. And they are real issues that the councils all around the state have to address. But we have to be responsible, and we have to be responsible about budgeting for this council. I note that in the Courier Mail Saturday that the state government is considering providing a rebate to water users in South East Queensland by turning off a lot of the plants that have been built, and have indicated a return to ratepayers of somewhere between $3.49 and $11.53 per year. And that's the amount of that amount. I wanted to make those comments. I know that this particular issue has caused unrest in our community, and council, including myself particularly, have taken that on board. It is an issue that we have had to grapple with, and it's an issue that I believe the council will continue to move forward on and find the best outcomes. So with that, I'll open the meeting up for general business and comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would like to move a motion. I'd like to give some councillors some background. In the last 3 years, most Townsville residents have seen their rates and charges far increase. Through the chair, I'd like to give a preamble before I move the motion. Thank you. In the last 3 years, most Townsville residents have seen their rates and charges increase far beyond any inflation rate that our Canberra-based statisticians proclaim. As a Conservative team, all of you campaigned at the 2008 council election proclaiming how rates and charges would not increase beyond 5% capped and how 15% discounts would be maintained on all charges. Within 3 years, every promise made about rates was thrown out of the window. Rate capping was pushed up to over 30%, removal and increased charges for rates that no one could afford. I have watched as this council has borrowed and spent on infrastructure for the northern and western areas of the city that had been ignored by previous councils over the last 20 years. And the cost of rates and charges have increased beyond any ratepayer's expectation. The removal of the 15% discount to the water and wastewater charges, plus the changes to the method of pricing, has seen an increase to this council's water business of approximately $24 million in revenue, or 20% when compared to the previous year, and a projected $64 million in operating surplus, as well as a $10.1 million in income tax revenue paid back to this council. It's pretty much a windfall for this council. I at least can look residents in the eye and say I didn't agree with the budget and its charges, unlike the rest of you in this chamber. And I would not support turning ratepayers into cash cows for this type of management. When the residents started to phone us or complaining about their bills once they arrived, many of you rather stand on the decision you've made in this chamber, chose to blame the state government for the charges. But you couldn't fool the residents. About 6 weeks ago, I witnessed right outside this chamber nearly 1,000 people vent their anger at this council. Even then, as elected representatives, none of you stood with the mayor and accepted your part in the process. At least the mayor was prepared to stand up and face the crowd.
Well, we were all there.
All of you were blaming the state government that they were responsible for the changes to the charges. A quick lesson in history for some of you here. In 2003, Dawson Wilkie, the then Director of Infrastructure, commissioned a Brisbane-based economist to write a submission on why the then Townsville City Council would not move to user pays to fully comply with NCP principles on water pricing. The report was submitted to the state government, who agreed with the council of the day. The report was then submitted to the then Howard federal government, who rejected the submission and withheld a portion of federal grants to the state because Townsville City Council would not comply. But the council, with the support of the state government, held the line for residents. So imagine the surprise to all the state government officials when this council attempted to pass the buck and blame the state government for having to introduce user pays. Now that it has been exposed that the huge increases in charges are not